we're going to go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about Curriculum Genie and Learning Genie. This is one of these really cool platforms that you can use to design lessons all the way up to units, all the way up to curriculum. And it's one of these things where it takes everything all together and kind of makes sure that it's all packaged together inside of your lesson. So with Curriculum Genie and Learning Genie and everything, it's just sort of another example of how there are lots of AI tools out there. There's like, hey Jerry, hi guys. There's lots of AI tools out there, but they all sort of operate in, they all sort of operate by themselves and together and everything. And the question you got to ask is, do they actually do they actually work together? Right? Are they actually sort of working hand in hand to build towards the same thing? And that's one of the things that I like about Learning Genie is that you plug in some of your most important planning documents. You plug in your portrait of your graduate, or you plug in your standards, you plug in your curriculum, whatever it is, and it keeps all of that in focus all the way through from the time that it starts building a unit, and then all the way down into the lessons, and all the way down into the individual little activities and everything. So probably the easiest way to be able to see it in action is to just build out a unit. So let's build out a unit. You start up, and you notice here that you can either create a brand new unit, or they've got a new feature where you can adopt an existing unit. So if you've already got documents or PDF files or something of a unit that you've already created, you just throw it in there and it's able to add even more stuff to it, which is really cool. And so then from there, you take that unit and you give it some instructions. It's kind of like any other AI platform where you tell it what it is that you're looking for. So I'm a high school Spanish teacher. In addition to teaching the language, we also teach a lot about the culture of Spanish-speaking countries. And so I thought, let's build out a unit about tapas culture in Spain, which is kind of a fun thing. It's something that we commonly talk about. So I just added a couple of details about the richness and variety of different tapas, the culture surrounding it, some of the phrases, so that we can, kind of practice talking about it and everything. And then also if you have books or resources that you want to refer to, you can tell it right there, and then it does a nice job of trying to align all of those up. And then here's the really interesting thing. Lots and lots of schools these days are starting to adopt a portrait of a graduate. Like, what do we want students to look like? What do we want them to be able to do by the time that they graduate? And if you keep that in mind, if you keep that at the forefront all the way through, it should guide you. Let's be honest. With teachers, it's easy to lose track of that, right? Like, even if you've got it on the wall, even if you see it on the way into school every single day, sometimes it's hard to see how does that portrait of a graduate actually fit with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So you upload that portrait of a graduate into Learning Genie, and it starts to incorporate it into every single lesson that you do. So then that way you've got some evidence that you're actually building towards that big picture idea. So if you look at this is an example of a unit, sort of start to finish. This is this fun little farm to table one for third grade, and it gives you the unit overview here. But then when you start to dive down into it, it shows how the lesson plan aligns to the portrait of a graduate, which is kind of cool. This is honestly one of the things that I haven't seen much of anybody else doing, is that we take some of these big picture things and we bring it down into the day-to-day lessons. And then in addition to that, you've got some of the different attributes that are within the portrait of a graduate, and it starts to align all of these things in here, which is really cool. We're kind of going big picture all the way down to the little details. So what you see right here, this is just a quick overview of the unit planner, of some of the things that you're able to do and able to see whenever it creates an entire unit. So you can see from here, you can add exemplars, you can talk about how long it's going to be, you even connect standards, because it's got all sorts of standards aligned in. And so you just pick out specific standards that you want. There's some information about the portrait of the graduate, and then it starts to generate. You've got the unit trajectory, you've got the concepts that it's going to cover and everything. And then it starts breaking it down week by week. And so then the unit becomes a week, the week becomes lessons, and then each of those individual lessons all has activities. And of course, as a teacher, you don't have to follow every single thing that it gives you, but it does give you sort of a path, right? It gives you kind of like a a direction that you can go so that you're not starting just from scratch, which I think is really nice. And this is the nice thing about it, that the backward curriculum design that we talk about, that we haven't, sometimes in our teacher prep programs, we talk about backwards curriculum design. Are we really doing it? It's actually built in. There's some other ways that we can differentiate and personalize as well, because if we've got IEPs, we've got our English language learners, we've got a variety of different, and what we can do too is we can add specific students and talk about different accommodations that we need to do, and then you'll notice it'll call out student by student specifically what you might consider adding in, which is a really nice thing to have that support, With Curriculum Genie, you can co-create with your students. You ask your students, okay, here's what we're studying. What do you want to learn about this? What do you want to do with this? And then they get some feedback about it as well. Then you've got your unit plan, and within your unit plan, it breaks it down into all these different parts. We've got the different concepts they're going to cover and the guiding questions that we might ask. So it's going to generate all of that. The band just keeps getting louder and louder. It is. Yeah, it's like, oh, the fire alarm just went off. What do we do now, right? All right, if you wanted to enhance your lesson, of course, you certainly can. And then within the unit planner, we've got the different weeks and the different lessons. One of the things I really love about it is that it helps you to localize to your area. So I'm from Indiana. It found connections to tapas culture with Indiana, because it takes the big picture idea of what's the general concept we're studying, what's something in your culture that you do. So it actually calls out some specific things related to my state. More teaching tips, culturally and linguistically responsive practices, and then it's even got slides. It builds out interactive slides that the students can do based on edu protocols, and it's also got slides that you can use for instruction too. And we know that sometimes the slides aren't perfect, so we just kind of like edit and adjust them. It's a good starting point, right? So this is the kind of cool thing about it, is that you basically have an AI agent working for you on your behalf. That's Learning Genie in a nutshell right there. Yeah, thanks for hanging out and checking it out. Absolutely.